go ahead and call to order the Thursday, May 10th, 2018 meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals for the City of Royal Oak. The board does not write the zoning ordinance, but does have the authority to grant relief from it where practical difficulty or unnecessary hardship would result. The board will vote on each agenda item following a public hearing. Use variance requests require a minimum of 6 affirmative votes in order to grant the requested variances. Non-use variance requests require a minimum of 5 affirmative votes in order to grant the variances. If you would like to request that the board table or adjourn your case due to the absence of a full board, which is not the case tonight, we have everybody here. And petitioners, please, shall do their best to limit their presentations to 10 minutes, and each participant in the public hearing shall do their best to limit their comments to 3 minutes. The first thing I am looking for is approval of the minutes for the April 12th meeting.
Motion to approve.
We have a motion
Second.
and a second. Any corrections, additions, deletions?
Looks good.
Not seeing any, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, we don't have any old business, I believe. All right, so that moves us right along to item D1, our first case of new business, which is case number F180502, public hearing on the appeal of Maureen and Tavis Wallner, petitioner and owner for the following request for the city's fence ordinance. Waive 2 feet of the maximum permitted 4 feet fence height within a front yard setback along South Rembrandt Avenue to install a 6-foot high site obscuring wood fence with a front yard setback as defined in the zoning ordinance located at 1202 East 6th. Mr. Murphy.
The site is a corner lot. It's located at the corner of 6th and Rembrandt, as you can see from the map on the screen in front of you. Since it's a corner lot and the lot to the south has a front yard setback on Rembrandt, this particular property is required under the fence ordinance to only have a maximum height of 4 feet, a fence of 4 feet on their property line adjacent to Rembrandt. So they're looking, as you can see from the photographs, status photographs of the site, you'll see that they're looking to install a 6-foot fence within that front yard setback. And again, the ordinance only allows for 4-foot tall setback because it's a corner lot. So they're seeking a waiver of that slight difference.
Was I imagining it, or was that fence filled in when I looked at it?
It was.
I have not been out recently. That was,
Seemed
I don't
like
have a
it
date
was,
stamp on
didn't
it.
it?
Probably 3 weeks ago.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Yes, sir.
Yeah, the house across the street from it, that also has a tall fence. Did that come before the board?
I believe so, for the house and the fence.
Okay.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any. Is the petitioner present? Please. Yeah, you can both come. Yeah, please both come up, introduce yourselves for the record, and tell us about what you want to do here.
Hi, Tavis Wallner, Maureen. We just moved to the area, so
Welcome.
about 7 months ago, and so we're just looking to put a fence up.
Yeah, but it's beyond the 4 foot and the 6 foot. And you did drive by. We have it temporarily bolted in place with our family in town last week, and we're expecting Sunday. So we figured we'd use some of the help and are hoping to seek approval for the fence. And I'd also submitted a letter from one of our neighbors, Mona Jabbar, an attorney within the city, for your review and consideration as well. So if you have any specific questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Yes, sir.
What hardship is there in needing it 6 foot high versus 4 foot, which is what the previous fence was there?
Yeah.
Just because the deck in the back is raised, just to add a little bit of privacy, because it is a raised deck, so 4 foot, it still didn't offer any privacy for that raised deck portion.
Being on a corner, we're a little bit more exposed, so.
Any other questions for the petitioner? All right, is there anything else that you two want to? Oh, did I see your hand? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Have you considered some soft shrubberies and things like that would grow taller and you could still be within the variance? I know that, I'm not sure, Joseph, you might help us with this. Could they put up some kind of a lattice on that deck at all? No, okay, so.
Yes. On the deck
On the
itself.
deck, yeah, on the
Sorry, I
deck.
thought you were referring to it.
So you could do something like that if you wanted a little more privacy for your deck.
So the Army moved me here. I'm only here for 2 years, so I think the time that would allow us for the shrubbery to grow up wouldn't support that. Yeah, the privacy. So.
Okay, so what, you're here for 2 years and we're looking at this for an indefinite amount into the
Yeah.
future. Is a 4 foot, can you live with a 4 foot fence for 2 years?
I mean, we prefer not to. I mean, we get to move to a place and we want to make a place as homey as we can for that short amount of time, and that would be a way for us to be able to make that a little bit more of a private space that feels a little more welcoming and a little more homey for us.
Well, and the point also being that we don't know if we're going to be in the Army still in 2 years as well, and if Michigan is a place that we decide that, I mean, we've had these discussions recently.
You guys
and
sound like
just,
a conversation together.
Well, a 4 foot fence might give you more opportunity to get to know your neighbors too.
We know our neighbors very well.
And are there any other questions for the petitioner? Not seeing any, I'm going to ask you folks to take a seat so I can go ahead and open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the ZBA on this issue? Not seeing anybody, I will close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table for additional discussion. Mr. Pearl?
I'm not prepared to make a motion right now, and I always have a major problem with people going for forgiveness instead of permission. And I'm kind of feeling that's happening here. I'm sure there's good reasons for it, but nonetheless, I went to look at a fence to approve building and found it built. I guess I looked across the street at that beautiful white fence too, with the nice side out to the neighborhood, and then I looked at that one with the ugly side out to the neighborhood. That doesn't thrill me either.
Yeah, come back up and address that question if you would, sir.
Yeah. That wasn't the outside of the fence, that is, or as you say, the ugly side, that is actually towards the inside of the yard with all the support and everything along those lines. That is actually facing the inside of the house.
Is something else going on the street side, on the Rembrandt side?
That is the decorative,
That's a decorative?
yeah.
Somebody sold you on that? Okay.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else?
I'd like to make a motion to deny the variance.
We have a motion,
I'll support that.
and there's second. Any initial follow-up?
Yeah, my thought is it's a corner lot. It's gonna be a corner lot. There's no side door out of that house onto that Rembrandt side. There's no real need for additional 6-foot fence there that I can see, and I don't really see a hardship to grant a variance.
Ms. Anderson, did I see your hand?
Well, I don't see a hardship as it was put. I see that there's different alternatives that could serve the same purpose, so I'll be in support of the motion.
Part of my problem with it is the short period of time you might be there, but we're granting a variance for the life of that property. So that property is going to remain whatever we decide tonight, and I support the motion.
Anybody else? Yes, sir.
I normally don't like supporting these fences on the corner lots, especially when it's not a super busy street like Main Street. South Rembrandt's not a overly busy street. If this was facing East 6th Street, maybe more so, but Rembrandt's more of a quieter street. So you're gonna have a lot more people jogging and whatnot going by it. And for safety, just seeing that driveway, even though you got the 10-foot triangle, it's, in my opinion, it's always better with the 4-foot. And as we've seen before, many other examples of people who've gone around, done a 4-foot fence with a nice shrubbery along with it. And yeah, it costs more to get the stuff that's already grown 6 feet tall, but it's doable. In fact, there was a couple of shrubs there in the existing pictures. You could see more that high, so I'm just sticking with what I normally go with.
Anybody else? I will not be supporting this motion to deny. This board has granted similarly from other people who have side lots where there's people walking back and forth so that they can have additional privacy. I don't see their hardship in terms of wanting additional privacy from people walking by their side lot different from anybody else who we have granted relief for. They did take the time to put the visibility triangle in, so it meets the city's requirements as far as safety is concerned, and so for those reasons, I will not be supporting the motion. Anybody else?
Since I've been on the board, we have approved a couple of these, but as I recall, they had proximity to things like nightclubs that get out and more busier intersections. So this is why I see a difference to this. I don't see the same hardship that we supported in the past. That's why.
I think it boils down to where you draw the line, and
Yeah.
and I'm choosing to draw it differently, I guess. All right, anybody else? Not seeing anybody, I will call for the vote, which is to deny. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, no. The motion carries. Thank you, folks. That moves us along to item number D2, which is case number 180510, public hearing on the appeal of Stellar Development LLC petitioner and Meijer Inc. owner for the following variance: waive 8 foot of the maximum allowable height of 30 feet to permit construction of a 4-story hotel located at 5150 Coolidge Highway. Mr. Murphy.
The site's located in what will be an outlot of the Meijer parking, the Meijer site and their large parking lot. So this site will be carved out of that piece of property. And they were in front of the Planning Commission 2 days ago. The Planning Commission granted the site plan approval for the construction of a 4-story hotel contingent upon them receiving the variance to the height. And if I can ever slowly scroll to the image, I'll show you the elevation.
I can't
But-
get mine to load at all, so.
Yes, very slow. Hotels are a special land use within this particular zoning district, but the limitation is 2 stories, or 30 feet in this particular zoning district. Most of the properties within the city that are in the general business zoning district around Woodward Avenue, there are very few, I think there used to be one on North Main Street. And the only other sites that I can think of that come to mind is the Meijer site and some right adjacent to it. So most of these sites are, that are zoning, in this zoning district, are directly adjacent to single-family neighborhoods off of Woodward Avenue. This site is a little different. Again, it does allow for hotels, but the limitation is 30 feet in height. And the petitioner is proposing the hotel at 38 feet, which is measured to the roof line. That's where we measure the height at. To the top of the parapet wall is almost 44 feet. But the petitioner is here seeking a variance of 8 feet from that maximum height of 30 feet. And with that, if it ever gets to the elevation, I can take any questions that you might have.
Any questions for staff at this point? Yes, sir.
Mr. Murphy, I didn't get a chance to review the video of the Planning Commission meeting, but did they have any questions or concerns about the height of this building at all?
They did not raise any objections or any concerns. Their greater focus was on being able to create that site and have it function, drive aisles and such with Meijer and of itself. There was, I'll say, less of a focus upon the height.
Thank you.
The properties across the other segments of Meijer Drive are industrial businesses or industrial properties themselves. So it does not have proximity to adjacent residential.
You've got the CN Party Store on one corner and the substation on the other, is that correct?
Got the German auto.
Oh, that's what it is, yeah.
There isn't a residence within
Quite some
shouting
distance.
distance.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, not seeing any, are the petitioners present? How are you, sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Andy Andre from Stellar Development, here representing Royal Oak Superior Hospitality, who is the applicant. As Mr. Murphy had mentioned, we were here just a couple days ago working with the Planning Commission on site plan approval. To that effect, the height issue was brought up, but to a positive response that it's not that large of a variance in relation to the property itself and the surrounding area. I'd like to touch on just a couple things and then answer any questions you might have. One of the things that we discussed as far as the Planning Commission was concerned was why this location. Intercontinental Hotel Group is IHG, that's the parent company of the Staybridge Suites, as well as Holiday Inn Express. So it's a large organization. They do market analysis, market research as part of, before entering into a market. Royal Oak obviously continues to be a strong market, will continue to be a strong market, and the availability of property to develop something similar to what we're talking about here is very challenging. Anything along Woodward is either unavailable, not within a reasonable budget, or just not large enough, very frankly. So we have worked with Meijer over several years on a couple other different properties. As Meijer has changed, as the retail business continues to change, these large expanses of parking areas, and they're just not as feasible as they used to be. So Meijer has taken a position over the last several years of disposition of their properties in order to maybe work something else into the property that is that would complement what they have. So we've worked with Meijer on two different locations over the last couple of years on almost the exact same type of project. We have a large parking area that is, if you've driven by, it's unused. It's deteriorated. It is something that we could take that is almost all impervious. We're adding quite a bit of landscaping. We're actually exceeding the landscaping requirements of the planning through the planning process, and so we're really taking an effort to enhance what's there. When we did look at the as Mr. Murphy had mentioned, the zoning in itself, we looked very closely at the zoning and looking at what we have here. This is the only that I could pick out, the only general business zoning not associated directly along Woodward and the small portion of Coolidge. Well, it just so happens it's a large piece of property that extends down. There is general industrial, both to the east and to the south. In both of those districts, in the general industrial district, a 4-story building is permitted as part of that. So it's kind of a little bit of a quagmire of where the property is located. The ordinance that was adopted, I believe it's 2012-13, that says hotels are permitted, but by special land use, and minimum of 2 stories and a maximum of 30 feet. So you're kind of caught in this little bit of a challenging area of developing a hotel. Because we do look for density. We look at maximizing our the density of a development by also minimizing our footprint. We're not looking to be into expansive, large areas. We want to minimize our footprint. So when we did look at this, we tried to take all of that in consideration. We did take a look at the building itself. The elevation is up. As Mr. Murphy had mentioned, we're asking for a variance of 8 feet. Well, for a 4-story building, we looked at minimizing our height. So we were able to reduce the height down as much as we could. So as part of the design in itself, we did take that into consideration and reduced the overall building height to really minimally of what we can do. So taking into consideration the location of the property, the extent of the zoning, which predominantly, as Mr. Murphy had mentioned, the general business being along Woodward, and the purpose of maintaining a height requirement there would be to not impede on the adjacent residential. In some of the considerations when it comes to how we approach on the design, we would ask that you consider our request for variance for that 8 feet.
Are there any questions for the petitioner? Yes.
So I take it the 8 feet gives you extra beds. It's not just a design issue.
That is correct. That is correct.
Okay.
Any other questions?
You were making a point, I believe, that was a little fast for me, and I think I missed it. Something about the ordinance is written such that in one area there is that height allowable, but not in this particular area. Was that true? You were saying something like that?
Yes. So under the GB zoning, a hotel is permitted by special land use, but there's a condition of the special land use that says the height has to be a minimum of at least 2 stories, is the way it's written, at least 2 stories, or a maximum of 30 feet. And so typically in the other projects that we work on and have been developing, you usually see some kind of relief to say if you're at least 2 stories, then there's some kind of relief on the overall maximum height. But in the case of the ordinance, and I think Mr. Murphy and I have talked about this before, it's a little bit of a challenge in the way the ordinance is actually written. You know, there's 2 ways, obviously, you could go about doing it. We could go back and revisit the ordinance in itself and see how that is written, or substantiate it through the ZBA, and that's the route we chose.
Yes, ma'am.
A question for
Oh,
you then.
were you done,
Oh,
Mr.
I'm
Curtis? I
sorry.
apologize.
Well, I was thinking Joseph might help me a little more, not that you weren't helpful, but where's the rock and the hard place on this one, is from your perspective?
I believe that the petitioner is trying to demonstrate that there's a uniqueness in the setting of this particular property.
Right.
With it being, if I can put words in your mouth, lumped into the same category of the same zoning district as the majority of these properties that are zoned general business are located directly adjacent to residential along Woodward Avenue. So, and just as a point of comparison, prior to 2001, when we did the ordinance amendment, that particular zoning district allowed a height of 65 feet, and it was dropped to 30.
Big drop.
Yes, big difference. And you'll see on the aerial photograph on the screen in front of you that this is the particular site that the petitioner would be carving as an outlot, and the reference to the properties across the street in general industrial zoning district, which allows for, I believe it's 45 feet tall or something of that nature. So across the street.
That was the point that
Yes.
went past me quickly. Thank you. That was exactly the point I was interested in hearing again. Thank you.
So you got the only plot on the south end that fits into this category.
Congratulations.
Exactly right.
Ms. Anderson, I
I
think
guess
you were
my
next.
question was probably bundled into all that, but, so what is your hotel need, how many feet per floor, I guess is what I'm saying? So did the 30 feet chop it off in half, or how did, you were saying that was something of a hardship?
Right, so typically, 8 feet is typically the minimum. The first floor is usually a little bit higher, and then we have the availability, because one of the things, when we work with hotels, the brands are very interested in maintaining as much consistency as possible. So it's very difficult to, just as though we have to demonstrate a hardship here, we also have to do the same thing with the brands. So minimum height would be 8 feet from floor to floor. And really, when you think about it, that's residential, very much like houses are. But in the expanse of a hotel, it can be a little bit confining.
Any other questions? Actually, I've got 2 questions for you. First of all, this brand that you're proposing for this site, I'm assuming is more of a longer stay type product?
That's exactly right. It's a extended stay limited service is what it would be considered. Typically, stays that we have, and we have this brand within our portfolio right now of hotels, and we have over 50 hotels in our portfolio. We see typically 3 to 5 day stays, which is not uncommon. You might have several weeks as well, depending on situations. But it is all suites. It also has kitchenettes as part of it, refrigerators. There is no restaurant, just continental style breakfast.
Okay. And my second question for you, you did mention the parking, and a couple of years back, Meijer underwent a pretty major overhaul. And I remember we were talking about the parking there, and they were something like 190% parked or something.
Right.
With this addition, have you done any studies? Does it take it down to 110 or 120?
It was part of the staff report when it came to the planning commission at the planning level. So actually, the Meijer is dramatically at this, even with the recent out parcels, we'll call it along Coolidge, with the clinic and that, they're still dramatically overparked. They're well beyond the maximum. right now. So I think we're talking about 270 parking spaces or something of that order. With what we're talking about as part of our development, and taking that out of the Meijer bank, that would actually bring Meijer into compliance. They would be above the minimum and below the maximum.
Right.
They would be right in that zone.
Right in that sweet spot. All
Yes.
right, excellent. All right, any other questions for the petitioner at this point? Then, sir, I'm going to ask you to take a seat real quickly and see if there's anybody in the audience that wants to address the ZBA on this matter. Is there anybody? All right, not seeing anybody, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table. Mr. Ofac,
I'd like to make a motion to approve the variance as requested.
we have a motion.
I'll support.
We have a second. Pick who you want. Yes, sir. The floor is yours.
I think they have a unique circumstance with the hardship with their height. We've already heard about some of those different areas that, even right by there, that is taller than that variance of 30 feet. So I think it really is a unique hardship that they have trying to fit this there. And I think it works. There's no residential nearby. It's mostly industrial or business, so it's not like you're going to be imposing upon residents in the area. And if you want to look at the height of some of the other businesses around there, just go by all those townhomes that are right on Maple. They're easily probably taller than what this is going to be. So I don't see any problem with granting this variance.
Any other follow-up to that? Yes, sir.
Okay, we oftentimes get concerned on height because of residences, because I don't think any of us would want maybe a 40 or 50-foot high building near our backyard. The trees right across the street behind those buildings are the nature park. Those trees happen to be just about 80 feet tall, twice as tall as this building's going to be, and any houses are the other side of that park, almost a quarter of a mile to a half mile away. You won't even, in your yard, if you get to where residents are, be able to see the top of that building because there'll be a screening of all of those trees in the way anyways. I can't see where any industrial building would care if something was 10 feet higher than, 30, or 30 feet, because what effect would it have on the industrial buildings or the commercial buildings around it anyways? So I see the hardship, as he said, that right across the street you could be taller, and the simple fact that there's just nothing that this is going to harm any other resident, being that they're all commercial and industrial.
Yes, sir.
My girlfriend's a property claims adjuster, and when she heard about this, she said, sign it, get it done. She puts a lot of people up in extended stays and uses this particular group often, so she was excited. The interesting thing, for 20-some years, we've been fighting for hotels in Royal Oak, and we haven't gotten any, and all of a sudden, we're starting to get some. So it's nice to see the hotel community kind of looking at Royal Oak in the light that we've always thought they should. I'll certainly be supporting this. I think this is relatively no-brainer.
And
Yes,
just
ma'am.
a quick little note on the parking. That was nice to know because I was a little concerned about that, even though that wasn't on our variance, but certainly giving that extra layer on the cake, so to speak, made me a little concerned. But in this case, I'm glad that that came up, and we'll be voting for it. So, and I think one of the reasons why hotels weren't built for a while is the banks wouldn't give people the money to do them because there were too many at one time. So I'm told by my husband.
Any other comments? Yes, sir.
Just real quick, I appreciate they took attempts to reduce the height, but as Bob said, this is not detrimental to this area. Plus, it helps reduce that oasis of parking or paving out there too, so it's all positives.
Should be great.
Yeah, just to restate that, we're often concerned of it being detrimental to the neighbors. This is actually helpful to one of the business neighbors in a great way, a partner in Royal Oak that we're glad to have in the Meijer store, so I'll be supporting it as well.
All right, not seeing anybody else, I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All set? Thank you very much. Thank you, sir. All right, and moving right along to item number D3, case number 180511, public hearing on the appeal of Russell Stevenson, petitioner and owner for the following variances. Alter, expand a non-conforming structure, waive 0.07 feet of the minimum required 5-foot west side yard setback, C, waive 1.5 feet of the minimum required 15-foot combined side yard setback to permit construction of a second-story addition to an existing non-conforming single-family dwelling located at 237 East LaSalle. Mr. Murphy.
Very fast. Give me a chance to.
I'm not sure if I'm fast or the computer's just scary slow.
Maybe a combination. Just touch it gently. There you go.
This property contains a one-story, single-family dwelling, and as you can see from the image on the screen, the survey, it has a non-conforming 4.3-foot west side yard setback to ordinance requires a minimum of 5. And on the opposite side, it meets the minimum side yard setback for a driveway, but however, together, both of the side yard setbacks need to be no less than 15 feet. And if you do the math, they certainly fall short of that. And the petitioner is proposing to construct a second-story addition that's in line with the existing walls below. So the addition itself would maintain those non-conforming setbacks. The petitioner is seeking a variance from the minimum side yard setbacks in order to add that second floor. Again, it's a non-conforming structure in that particular aspect, and they'll be continuing it with a second-story addition that's non-conforming as well.
But no more non-conforming.
That's one way to look at it.
Going up, just not going further out.
Correct.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy? Is the petitioner present?
Hello, my name's Tamis Donaldson, and I'm the architect for this project, and I'm here with the owner, Russ Stevenson, and I'm here to just talk about it with you. The idea is that there's a single residence that's, under 1,000 square feet, and really the square footage for today's age is more in the 2,000 square foot age. So really, we want to upgrade the house that's there and just extrude it right up and turn it into a house that's more 2,000 square foot. And so on each side of the house, both structures are two-story houses, so it fits nicely into the neighborhood. I think the hardship is that the foundation's already there, and we just simply want to reuse the foundation without wasting resources or capital, and so we just want to simply go up.
Any questions for the petitioner? Yes, sir.
Did you look at any possible ways to at least solve one of the side setback issues and how it affects it? I understand you would be losing probably space on the second floor there, but.
Well, really, I think for me it looked like a mistake. It looked like, well, what's that little piece doing there? This little roof that's 8 inches. Like, why is that there? It looked like a mistake. So aesthetically pleasing, I wanted to just bring it all the way up.
You agree with that, too?
I agree, 100%.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any, I'm going to ask you to take a seat real quickly, if you would, please, and I'll go ahead and open up the
All right,
public
thank you.
hearing. Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address the ZBA on this issue? It's a quiet night out there tonight. All right, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table.
They did have a few neighbors. That
Yes, that's correct.
Mr. Clapp?
Well, I think this is a case where there is pure practical difficulty. I mean, if you're forced to make this home comply, that's a host of structural issues, water management issues. If you're trying to force this inward, there's a bunch of problems here. Plus, as the applicant mentioned, aesthetic issues. So I'm in full support of this. I think it's a tasteful design. I think it fits the context of the neighborhood, and it's just done well.
Is that a motion?
That is a motion.
I second. Second motion.
All right, so we have a motion, we have a second. Is there additional discussion on the motion?
Well, I agree that sitting in between two-story structures, it would be seemingly absurd to try to take this non-conforming structure and make it conforming. We're not doing any damage, we're doing something good by seeing this expanded.
Yes, sir.
I'm kind of back across the street looking at this, and again, I think I'd much rather look at what's going to be built than what is there now, just kind of the high-low of it. I think it'd look nicer if the whole neighborhood kind of on a consistent level. I will be supporting it.
Anyone else? All right, not seeing anybody, I will call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? You're all set. Thank you so much. We're moving right along here tonight.
You're doing good.
Oh, yeah, you can't say it out loud.
Yeah, now we're in trouble.
All right, that takes us to item D5, which is case number 180513, public hearing on the appeal of Broadway Salon Studios. And
What happened to Lafayette Court?
Air moved fast.
What? Oh, I did. I'm sorry. Oh, I extra prematurely.
We don't
I was
want to
trying
do
cut
that
the
one.
meeting
We're going to
short.
save that one for next month.
Item D4, I apologize, case number 180512, public hearing on the appeal of Matthew Norton, petitioner and owner for the following variances: alter expanding non-conforming structure, waive 1 foot of the minimum required 4-foot east side yard setback, and C, to waive 79 square feet of the maximum allowable lot coverage of 1,800 square feet to permit construction of a second-story addition to an existing non-conforming single-family dwelling located at 939 Lafayette Court. Mr. Murphy.
This is on Lafayette Court, which is a no outlet street or dead-end street, and it's just south of Catalpa and west of Washington. If you went down it to take a look at the home, you probably remember that. It's a bit of a tight squeeze on that street. I think this property contains a single-family dwelling. As you can see from the photograph, there's a portion of along the rear of the dwelling that juts out a little bit closer to the property line, and it actually sits 3 feet from that south property line. The ordinance, based on this lot size, ordinance requires that it be, the side yard setback be no less than 4. So that little portion that's shown on the photograph on the screen in front of you is non-compliant at 3 feet. The petitioner is proposing to add a second-story addition to that portion of the structure, as well as extend that line of the house further back and create an additional floor area, first and second floor. And we'll look at the floor plans to help you visualize that better, but they would maintain that 3-foot setback. So they're seeking a waiver of 1 feet from that minimum required 4-foot setback to do the addition on top of the existing portion, as well as continue to go further out with additional living space. The proposed modifications result in a total lot coverage of just over the maximum. This particular lot, as well as the other lots on this block, are rather modest in size. And the ordinance allows, in this particular case, that all the structures with a roof line can't exceed more than 1,800 square feet. And based on the petitioner's proposal, it goes slightly over 1,879 square feet. So they're seeking a waiver of 79 square feet from that maximum allowable lot coverage. And I'll bring up the elevations on the screen so you can review those as well. The petitioner did provide a brief summary of what they intend to do, and you'll see the floor plan associated with the, again, that to the rear of the dwelling, that small 1-story bump out. They plan on adding additional ground floor or first floor living space, as well as adding a full second story, and it would accommodate on the ground floor family room and upstairs a bedroom.
Any questions for Mr. Murphy? Yes, ma'am.
So the 1,800 square foot lot coverage, they were under that prior to this?
Yes. Yeah, they probably were just under it somewhat, and this will push them just over it somewhat.
Any other questions? All right, not seeing any. Is the petitioner present? Please come up, sir. Introduce yourself for the record and tell us about your plan, if you would, sir.
Good evening. My name is Matt Norton. I live at 939 North Lafayette. I purchased the home in 2004. In the summer of 2016, my wife and I had our first 2 children, twins to start off. So as you can imagine, we are kind of running out of room with our 2 boys. The proposal is, as you mentioned, basically to extend the existing back room of the house back 17 feet, which would allow us to have a first floor family room and add another bedroom upstairs of that, as well as converting the existing flat roof upstairs to a bathroom. As you mentioned, it is kind of a crammed, narrow street. It's also kind of an irregular lot in that the property line kind of along that edge curves back. So as it extends out, it actually gets to a point where it is conforming with that 4 feet. But obviously where the existing structure is that we'd be extending is not. I think it's important to note that basically we'd be trading deck for house. There is a large deck on the back of the house right now that does extend closer to that property line. Actually extending the house out would get us closer to the requirement of the 4-foot setback. The floor plan for the proposed addition, in maximizing, you know, what we're trying to accomplish, we do have a stairwell that's on that wall that would start on the existing part of the house in that room and go up. So for the house to kind of be out and then back, it would kind of create an unusual kind of structure right there. I also don't think it would actually be possible to execute exactly what we're trying to do right there.
Any questions for the petitioner?
Could you tell me what other solutions you dismissed that you looked at in your design process?
Well, even further than that, you know, my wife and I considered, you know, one of the possible options is moving. We both really love Royal Oak. We love this house, and we really like to raise our family here. Looking at the values in cost right now in Royal Oak, for us to get what we're looking to accomplish for our family, it would probably make it difficult in this area. So
what I'm getting at is, did you try any solutions that would move the addition over 1 foot to be in compliance with the front of the house?
it was very difficult working with my builder and the architect to accomplish the structure with making that alteration.
The reason I think we need
Sir,
to put.
before you start, can I have you introduce yourself, please, for the
Sorry.
record?
Jim Hall with J-Bill Construction. I'm working with Matt.
Thank you.
We kind of need to put the stairs there. He already has another set of stairs that go upstairs to the second floor. And we can't create a space to that addition without eliminating another bedroom upstairs. And that the whole idea is to add another bedroom. So we need the new set of stairs in the existing part of the house that starts into the addition. And as you can see, the addition is already pretty narrow. At the top of the stairs, you know, it's only 10 foot something, and then when you go around adjacent to the stairs there, it's pretty skinny going into the bathroom. So we need every inch we can get there, and to use the outside wall is the best place to put the stairs. So that's why we kind of want to just tie into the existing foundation and just go
I guess
up.
I'm looking at it in terms of, if you flip the bathtub, couldn't you just move everything over 1 foot and still have your stairs there? It would just jog in a little bit.
Well, I think that, if I remember correctly, I had that on the first floor where the addition starts, we're tying into another wall that's already existing. So we would have to take that down and add a new footing next to it right there on that picture in the very bottom part right there where the existing wall is. We'd have to take that down and add another foundation next to it and go over 1 foot. And the cost of that versus just tying into the existing foundation, I mean, it just makes more sense to do it this way. So, and as he mentioned, where the addition starts, we're non-conforming, we're 3 feet, but the lot is shaped like this. It's sort of like a parallelogram. And as you go out, the end of the new addition will conform. It will be 4 feet or more. So really, we need that foot variance for maybe about 6 feet, and then it will be conforming. So this really makes the most sense for us to build this addition for them, and it's really not we're not asking for a giant room or just, you know, something pretty.
I can appreciate the fact that you're not asking for a giant room, but I don't know what the fire marshals say, but there was a garage that burnt down in our neighborhood, and it was so close it almost caught the other homes on fire. So that's kind of what I'm looking at here, just any possibility that you could shift it over to be in compliance. And, you know, I'm thinking, well, maybe there's some way that you haven't looked at. I know we all like to keep costs as low as possible, but sometimes that's not always the case when you're doing additions. You have to problem solve and look at other solutions.
Well, the way that the lot is, or the house is right there, between the kitchen and the dining room, that spot right there, we kind of need to use to bring our plumbing and HVAC up there. So in order for us to move that thing over, it's really going to cause a jog in the house to where it's just not gonna make sense aesthetically. It's just not gonna, it's gonna be kind of a zigzag, right, around that spot. So, you know, as I said, it's gonna be non-conforming for just a few feet, you know, so this really does make the most sense for us. We looked at it, I mean, the architect's not here with us, but he did try to draw it a few different ways, and the house is, you know, the rooms are small, and so in order to maximize I think the archway from the dining room into the new space, the addition needs to be where it's drawn. Otherwise, I'm not sure if it's gonna work.
Let me jump over to this side of the table. We have Anthony first, then Jeff.
I can appreciate somewhat what's trying to be done here. But the question I have is, how many bedrooms do you currently have?
Currently, it is a 3-bedroom house. However, the 1 bedroom is up front, and it's kind of over where the front stairs go. So it is a very small room that putting even, say, a single bed in would be a challenge. So, I mean, it would probably be more considered of an office. It is just a very small room.
Okay, because I have a small house similar to that. But the issue I have more so is not so much the 1 foot, because I can understand why you have the hardship of doing what you're doing to get that, is if there was another way to do this without adding on the 80 square feet, that puts you over the maximum lot coverage, even if that means redoing a little bit more of the upstairs than what you wanted to compact this footprint more so. I don't know if you guys had looked at that or not, and since you only have part of the house here, I don't know what's feasible. So that's my concern of why this extra 80 feet that you need.
Well, I think that the stairs has a lot to do with it. Adding those stairs, we need a certain run that we have to have in order to have the proper amount of stairs and meet code. So we really kind of had to extend the addition out to have a landing at the top of the stairs so that we can come around into the room. To shorten that up would not allow us to put the stairs in there. And if we had to do, you know, stairs landing and then go up this way, there's not enough room. There just simply isn't enough room for that. So the stairs kind of need to be right where they're drawn on there. And any foot you take off of that space upstairs, that bedroom, it becomes almost not worth it. I mean, it's not a very large room as it is. So it's a unique position because of the way the lot is shaped and how the house is laid out. And this kind of meets all of his needs, so.
Mr. Clay.
I was going to say, in the previous case in front of us, I could see the practical difficulty there. I mean, the second story stacked directly on top of those walls. I just don't see it here. I mean, I don't see why. There's no structural reason I see that whole addition can't be pushed to the north. There's plenty of space there. You have the driveway to work with. It won't impact the driveway moving it to the north. In all honesty, I think it could make that plan a bit more regular in shape if you did push it to the north. That family room's a bit narrow.
I think if you were to go into the house and look at it from a different perspective, it would, you'd probably understand. Does that make sense, man?
Absolutely, yeah. You know, it's a small space. It's kind of awkward the way the whole lot is with the house, and really what we're trying to do is you know, do the addition in the way that makes the most sense for the current structure of the house, maximizing the space, you know, with as little impact as we can on, you know, encroaching on the property lines.
Yes, ma'am.
My concern is that 79 feet also. Have you talked to your neighbor at 935? And does he have any problem or she have any problem with you having this larger wall behind their house?
You're talking about the property directly to the south of me. I have a very good relationship with that man. That house is actually, that you're talking about, has actually been under construction for over 7 years. So nobody currently lives there. The outside of the house is somewhat finished, but there's nobody living in that house. My personal opinion would be if we did speak to that neighbor, he would actually probably like the fact that my current deck that was there when I bought the house would now be, that wouldn't be there, right? The deck's going away. So the addition to the house is actually going to create more space on that edge where he does have his driveway situated. So I think he would be completely in favor of this.
Not seeing any other hands, I'm going to ask you gentlemen to take a seat real quickly and open up the public hearing. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to address the ZBA on this matter? Not seeing anybody, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to this side of the table. Anybody want to start?
Well, I'm really torn because I can understand some of the hardships, but also I understand with the 3-foot one, but the 79 feet, I don't. I know the hardship of them wanting to have more space in their house and stuff like that, but unfortunately, as we've brought up before, this is a lifetime change that we're doing here. So yes, it may help them now in the short term, but say they go and move, now we've created this condition that's there for the life of that house. And how does that impact the life of the future neighbors or life of the future people that live there in taking up even more space in that lot? That's my biggest concern. There's just not a big enough hardship presented for why that extra 79 feet is a unique circumstance for this lot that warrants it. So that's my problem.
Yes, sir.
I'm back to across the street again. I drove down the street and felt very claustrophobic. And the thought of adding more bulk to it, I didn't really feel it's going to be an asset to the neighborhood.
Is anybody prepared to take action?
I move to deny case number 180512.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second. Go ahead, Alan. I'll second that.
Do you want to follow up on your motion?
Well, I feel that there's other solutions, and they may not be the most cost-effective solutions for this property, but they would be more in line with our ordinances. And I'm real concerned about that closeness variance, and I'm certainly also concerned about the over limit size. So those are my reasonings. I just don't see a hardship in this case. I think that there's other ways to approach it that may or may not have been explored. So
I agree with Ms. Anderson. I think there's creative ways to get around this problem. There's other solutions for this.
I don't know that I'll be in support of the motion. I'm looking at a deck that's sticking out pretty far and is more of a nuisance than bringing it back to the 3-foot line would be. A lot that's irregularly shaped, and we're asking for a 1-foot variance for, I think the builder said, about 6 feet of that run, and then it is in compliance, and by the end of it, it is well off the 4-foot because the property line's on an angle, you know. And I appreciate what you say about, I felt a little claustrophobic on that street as well, but then I don't live on that street. I'm used to a little bit more space on the street I live on. And I think people who live on that street are used to it being a tight street, and I don't think that the addition of a little bit more square footage on this lot is going to impact the quality of the neighbors' homes as a result. So I won't be in support of the motion as is on the table.
Yeah, I along with Mr. Curtis, I won't be in support of the motion either. I think we've looked at countless cases where we have a house that's in place and they're just looking to build upon the footings and the foundation that's already in place, and that's what's happening here. I think Mr. Curtis raises a good point that with this being an odd-shaped lot, and as you go a little bit further back, the 1-foot variance really sort of takes care of itself. You know, but the other thing I always say to myself is when we're looking at a case like this and when we look at the practical hardships, and I really do think there's a practical hardship, And the fact that this lot is shaped like a parallelogram, to say no to this gentleman is to say, take your money and spend it elsewhere. And frankly, he's a Royal Oak resident who wants to stay here, and I want to make that easier for him.
That being said,
Well, actually, Mr.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Opek had his hand up.
I have no problem with the hardship of the parallelogram argument too, and I actually don't necessarily like this proposal to get rid of both variances because I have no problem with the 3-foot portion of it. I have a problem with the 79-foot portion. I think, in a way, Mr. Klatt's right. There could have been a little bit more massaging of this to at least get that down from 79 feet to something else that would be closer to compliance than the 79 feet. Yes, it's taking up the same amount of space possibly as the deck, maybe a little bit more. I didn't look at that particularly exactness, but essentially you are having the same square footage, but it's just taking that second story portion of that extra footprint versus the deck, which is more open, that I'm going back and forth on.
Mr. Kroll, I think you were next.
I'm sitting here feeling like some houses just can't be expanded. I mean, some houses were built that way, and that street's built that way. If every neighbor on that street wanted to do the same thing, where would we be? So I guess I'm just looking at this house, and I always want to make people happy and have their dreams come true. But on the other hand, I think there are some situations where the house just shouldn't be expanded, and I think this is one of them.
Mr. Murphy, this was public noticed, and everybody within 300 feet was notified, and
Yes, indeed.
I don't see anybody up there jumping up and down, so. Mr. Muller.
Joe, decks aren't considered in the square footage coverage? Thank you. I agree with Anthony on the fact that I don't have a problem with that addition going back, but I have a problem with the 79 square feet of more coverage. And it isn't that, oh, it's still the deck there, it's still 79 feet. The deck is still outside. The building is inside, so it's coverage. And that's my problem on some of these, and I'm not sure if you could come up with a design that didn't use that 79 square feet. Or maybe, you know, if it was half that, there'd be something that we might be more agreeable on. But there's small lots, our city's filled with small lots, and we're getting lots of people that want to cover more than the amount that zoning says. And as it's said several times tonight, then we're stuck with the building forever.
Anybody else? The motion is to deny. Everything, yes. I guess I do have one question for the builder. Can you come up here real quickly, sir? Sure. I mean, you're hearing a lot of the talk about people not sounding too concerned about the setback issue, but the coverage issue. I mean, can you redesign it to squeeze out those 79?
Could you pull up the floor plan again for me real quick?
Because I guess what I'm getting at, sir, is, I mean, if somebody at this table introduced a motion to table this until next month, so you could go back to the drawing boards,
Yeah.
instead of us just saying no and killing it for a year?
Well, I guess my retort would be, if 70, let's say 80 square feet, that would be upstairs and down, right? So let's say that the room is 10 feet wide. I'd have to shorten the whole addition by 4 feet. Does that make sense?
And you
That'd
had
be
10, you now
40
have 6.
40 and 40?
No, it goes by the lot coverage.
Okay, so I'd have to take 8 feet off of the whole thing, and that takes away pretty much the whole bedroom. So, you know, we would have to try to come up with a new way to put the stairs in. And I mean, I suppose, yes, there's probably a way it could be done, but this just made the most sense, and the house just flows better this way, I think. So 80 feet though is in order to put a second floor on there and take 80 square feet away of actual floor space, it's gonna be really tough.
Well, let me put it to you differently then. I mean, I'm gonna call for the vote. I don't know which way it's gonna go. I mean, I'm looking around the room and I have a feeling if a motion was introduced to give you, to table it for a month and you look at it, you could always come back next month and say,
Sure.
I just can't do it.
Sure.
Or I can just call for the vote now. I'm throwing the ball in your court.
Okay, so if you table it, then we can come back to the drawing board. But if both motions are denied, then there's no.
That unless there's substantial changes to the plan, you can't reintroduce it for a year.
Okay. You wanna try to table it then, or?
I mean, I'm willing to work on it,
Okay.
to give our best possible solution. I do agree that there is a challenge with, the minimal amount of space we were trying to add for a bedroom, and, I guess my thought was the way that the plans were drawn up right now really maximize everything the best we can, but,
Well,
yeah, I'm absolutely willing to work with you and try to do whatever we can.
Pardon us while we whisper.
I'm getting advice from staff. I mean,
great.
Can I ask, I see is there 9 people up? 9 altogether? So you have to just have a 5-4 vote to win, or just majority? Okay.
I like to think of it as passing, not win.
Win. It's your house.
There is a motion on
Murphy
the
had-
table, we were whispering,
Yeah,
which everyone
yeah.
probably heard.
Yeah.
If the board there is a motion on the table, which should be acted upon in some manner, way, shape, or form. If the board there's a possibility to grant some of the variances and deny others. For instance, the conversation seems to be evolving around approval of A and B related to the side yard setback and expanding the non-conforming structure, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of positive conversation about waiving the 79 square feet. You could simply deny that, and then the petitioner would have that knowledge, and they would redesign their drawings before they come in for a building permit, versus coming back to you with a design drawing and you.
May I ask?
Sure.
So if they were to come back with another design that was asking for 40 feet of variance,
Yep.
now they need a new case number and a new fee to ask for, versus tabling this.
Yes.
And coming back a month later with a new plan and not a new case number and a new fee.
That is correct.
So it saves the petitioner some money to table and rethink it and see if next month.
Yeah, next month you could give them this, you could give them 79 square feet, or you could give them less.
Right.
Correct.
I was asking him that in front of you.
I was
for-
gonna ask the same thing,
Yeah.
So probably just table it then.
If that's-
makes the
So
most
how do we do that as a
There's
board?
motion on the.
there is a motion on the table, so I
Who made the
can
motion?
go- if the
Leslie
motion
had to
maker and the
withdraw.
supporter want to withdraw their motion and introduce a new motion, that certainly would be the first step. I forgot who made the motion.
Leslie did.
I did.
Oh, she's down there contemplating,
I
okay.
contemplated.
Quick letter.
All right, in deference to the petitioner, I will withdraw my motion and.
Well, hold on, before you
postpone-
withdraw, and who seconded it?
I second it.
Are you okay withdrawing your
I am
support?
okay
All
withdrawing
right,
that.
then now the floor's back to you, ma'am.
Okay, so then I will move to adjourn this till the next meeting.
I will-
Second?
Oh, I'm sorry.
All right.
Go ahead, Paul.
I would like to say that I'd like to see some different drawings here. I mean, I really think it's possible to do this, and I think it's challenging, but I think you can do it. I don't know about Mr. Klatt, who's an architect, but think in terms of maybe doing a cantilever, shorten it up, and maybe that'll help get you some of that room that you need in that bedroom. I'm not sure, but I just know that there's different ways to approach this creatively that will work for the petitioner.
Any other, yes, sir.
Having a survey that shows that odd-shaped lot would be very helpful.
They do have a plot plan.
plot plan on the plan, I think, should be.
I don't see one that shows the angle of that lot.
Yeah, the upper right corner there, you can zoom in, it shows it.
Ah, thank you.
Any other comments on the motion? All right, so the motion at this point is now to table this until the June meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? All right, gentlemen, take another bite of the apple. All right, that moves us down to item number D5, which is case number 180513, public hearing on the appeal of Broadway Salon Studios and Perfect Arch Eyebrow, petitioner and Royal Oak Property LLC and Slater Management, owner for the following variances: A use variance, B, to waive 875 feet of the minimum required 1,000-foot distance from a school, library, park, playground, licensed daycare, or religious institution to permit a tattoo microblading studio, which is defined as an adult-oriented business located at 405 South Washington. Mr. Murphy.
The site was previously occupied by a retail tenant, and recently the business owner completed interior renovations to establish a personal service salon, which includes individual rooms that are then leased out to contractors or independent business owners, and they include services such as cutting hair, coloring, permanent makeup, which is what they're here for today, facial waxing, manicures, pedicures, things of that nature. Again, the petitioner is proposing to rent one of those rooms and perform a service that's referred to as microblading. Microblading is governed under a state act which defines it as a body art facility, and it requires a state license. These facilities may offer one or more of the following types of services: tattooing, branding or piercing. And under the state act defines tattooing, and it includes cosmetic tattooing or the application of permanent makeup, in this case what's referred to as microblading. So it involves making an indelible mark on the body by inserting pigment under the skin. It's the same type of application as your traditional tattoo establishment, which is what most people are familiar with. However, it's done with the intent to provide individuals who have lost their eyebrows for a variety of reasons with the ability to have the appearance of eyebrows in the form of a permanent tattoo. Again, our ordinance considers a tattoo establishment, and as I like to point out, whether it's an anchor on your arm or a Mike Tyson tattoo on your face or microblading your eyebrow, it's still a tattoo. It's the same application of an same instrument, the same license from the state. So we do define it as a tattoo establishment, which is an adult-oriented commercial business. And those types of businesses are neither a permitted nor a special land use in the central business district or the downtown. So they're seeking a use variance in order to be able to perform that microblading application. Adult uses do need to be a minimum distance of 1,000 feet from a wide variety of uses that are identified in the ordinance, which include schools, libraries, parks, playgrounds, daycares, and religious institutions. And of course, we have a great number of all of those type in the downtown. So you'll see where we've listed what we believe to be the closest distance to a variety of those uses. So they certainly don't meet the distance requirement, and they're seeking a waiver from that as well. The petitioner did provide a business plan of operation for you to review. Hopefully you had a chance to look at that so you have a clearer understanding, and they're certainly here today to be able to better explain that to you.
Now, Mr. Murphy, you specifically stated waiving 875 feet, so there's something at 125 feet. But you're making it sound like that even if whatever that is at 125 feet wasn't there, there's something else at 175 and something else at 250. So there are multiple things that would trigger the 1,000 feet.
Correct. That's the closest.
You just picked the closest one.
Yep, and that's where we placed. But you'll see in the report it references distances from other uses. This is simply the closest one.
Right, okay.
May I ask? This particular use variance would allow for tattooing, in this case for microblading purposes, but that variance would stay at this address and later someone else could use it for other sorts of tattooing. Is that true?
That is correct. And when you obtain that license from the state, it entitles you to be able to perform, again, those various types of tattoos that I referenced or any other that your mind can, or imagination can, it's the same application from the state, and that's why we have to view it with that little set of lenses that we do. We thought about it many times over, and there's just no way around that. It's the same instruments, the same applications, the same license from the state. There's just no way to not, for us not define it as that particular type of use.
But is there any way for us to restrict it to microblading?
You can attempt to do that as best you can. You can have that discussion with the petitioner, and they provided you with a plan of operation. There's probably some legal question to that as to once you've established a use, again, that the state says you can do this or that or the other under that, it becomes a challenge. It becomes a challenge for us to be able to enforce that.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? All right, not seeing any. Are the petitioners present?
Yes.
Good evening,
Francis
sir.
Merrim, owner of Broadway Salon Studios. The nature of the ordinance is to restrict an adult type of business. As you guys, if you've looked at the business plan, microblading and my tenant's proposed use is not adult in nature, besides providing cosmetic procedure to enhance, the eyebrows in situations where someone is looking to seek that service.
Sir, can you give us like a brief 45-second microblading 101?
I'll let Mitch and Ubal give you that better explanation.
Good evening. Thanks for hearing us. I'm very familiar with what you're saying, sir. My wife, who I...
Deperno. I'm at the artist, not my husband.
So she's the artist.
And your name, sir, is?
Mitch DePerno.
Oh, thank you.
And I am Ubo Deperno. Yes, I had experience for 13 years.
Okay, so my wife did this for quite a while in Thailand. She owned a salon in Thailand, and we got married about 7 years ago. Of course, it's not allowed here as freely as it is in Thailand, but she has a lot of experience with it, both with electric needles, like a tattoo shop would do, and also with microblading, which is quite a different instrument. You're very informed, Mr. Murphy, in a lot of this, but please let me make some differences between the two. So you have a couple of statutes, which basically is Public Act 375, which basically says that, which governs body art activities or facilities. And yes, you're right, microblading is binned in the same category as a tattoo parlor. And that is by creating an indelible mark under a person's skin with pigment. A tattoo shop uses an electric needle typically that penetrates quite deeply into the skin. It has they use many different kinds of needles, and every one of those needles have to be sterilized after use. My wife uses a small, very small, almost looks like a blade, and it is a one-time use sterilization, sterilized by beta or gamma rays, and it's never used again. That's not the concern here, though. Your ordinance says anybody that does any type of tattoo procedure like this is doing what's is defined as an adult-oriented business. So, and I can understand that businesses don't like tattoo shops, or cities don't like tattoo shops, and other businesses like pawn shops and strip clubs and whatnot, to any type of number in their city. Hence why I'm here for a variance. So basically you would need a variance to do this. What I'd like to say is, under your Article 770-76, adult businesses have operational characteristics that have serious and deleterious impact on residential and commercial businesses. So a tattoo shop might cause people to think twice about where they shop, or where they walk through your city. Might not be considered as the most positive business in your city, and I can totally understand that. I can just show you a little difference between what a tattoo shop produces and what my wife's shop would produce. As you can see, it's quite a difference in what you see walking out of our business. My wife makes the ladies more beautiful, one person at a time. And she's been doing it for many years. Of course, like I say, we've been unable to actually find a place or a city that might want to do this. And I think that the difference in the use variance we're looking here for is, and as a resident of Royal Oak for 27 years, I'm interested in making Royal Oak a better place, not a lesser place. So the use variance would be that you have the power to grant this variance based on use if the usage falls within the spirit of the public act and the chapter. So so this is just a number of people that my wife have done. I'm sorry I don't have, I sent you guys, but this is some ladies that she's done in Thailand, which she did a long time ago.
If I can ask you to stay on the microphone just so you're on the record.
Pass it around.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
if you want to give it to Ms. Anderson, she can pass it around, we can
Sure.
look at it.
So these are just some of the people she's done. A lot of ladies start losing their eyebrows, some genetically, some lose them from age. And there's one lady in there that lost her eyebrows because she went through chemotherapy, lost all her hair, but her eyebrows never came back. So I see this as a positive service for Royal Oak. I don't see any detriment to your businesses. In fact, I think it's going to be a very positive service to Royal Oak businesses.
And
So,
as the business owner, if you've walked into our salon, you get the feel it's a high-end atmosphere. By no means would we ever encourage or allow the use of traditional tattooing in the building. We have another salon studio in the city of Troy, not too far from this location. We have 2 microblading studios in the building, and they run to the utmost professional atmosphere. All of their clients are exactly what you see here, and by no means has the use ever varied in that location from the intent of my potential future tenant and what we're looking to do in this case. I do believe the ordinance is discriminatory in classifying this type of use as an adult-natured business. Now, I'm sure when the ordinance was written, this was not a common technique used in the industry. This is a beauty technique. It is by no means, should not be considered adult in nature, and it's something that why we're asking for the variance. The atmosphere that it's located is not street-facing. There is no access to see what is going on besides our front units, which are full-service hair salons, which are currently occupied. You would enter the lobby and then go directly to the private room where the procedure would be done furthermore in private, and no one would notice that this took place on the street in the neighborhood to affect the community or the local, the local residents. So this is why we're here. We hope that you consider, the board considers this variance. By no means are we looking to provide any sort of adult-natured business by the way the ordinance is written. Due to the certain health code procedures and the Oakland County Health Department and the nature of the technique itself is the only reason why it's considered tattoo, which, as I mentioned, it's unfairly just allocated as this adult use.
Any questions for the petitioner at this point?
Furthermore, I did have one other thing. It was brought to my attention, Palazzolo Salon, which is located right across the street, did have this same zoning variance that was granted for permanent makeup in the same situation. So obviously there were no issues while Palazzolo was in operation directly across the street, which furthermore would justify our request for the variance.
So could you explain the relationship between, I'm kind of confused about who's doing what here.
I'm the owner of Broadway Salon Studios, which is, if you show the layout, is a private salon ownership type of concept. We built out the space, we provide common areas, and then we subdivide the units and rent them to individual business owners. Different than a traditional salon where they all work for typically one common owner and share an open area. The stylists in our building and beauty professionals have their own private space where they can operate their own business. I am simply the landlord to our tenant, and my job is to provide the right atmosphere and to emulate to not only my one tenant, but the rest of the tenants in the building, the atmosphere and the experience that they expected when they signed their lease. So by no means is this an impact even to any of the other tenants in our building at the same time for the structure, and they would be simply a tenant in the space. And I have no issue restricting the use to microblading and permanent makeup. By no means am I here asking for nor do I want a traditional tattoo parlor in my business.
Any other questions? I thought yes.
So I'm a little confused with you, Alan, that the petitioner and yourself, do you already work at the Troy store? Or?
No.
Okay,
No.
so these are different people you're talking about? Okay.
Actually, my wife has come here, and this has actually been her dream for the last 6 or 7 years to try to get into a place like this. But we've looked at other places. Some cities been microblading similarly, and they basically, you do enough radiuses and you're not allowed in the city. Basically, my request here is basically that this type of, if you want to call it tattooing, you can. It is similar in process, but the law is written so the adult business and its offensiveness to this, perhaps people in the city.
But that was my other question, going along with that, was that you have had these issues, whether they're cities. Have you petitioned other cities and been denied?
No, I haven't petitioned anybody, but I've asked around.
Because you did mention that you've had.
Yeah, so we've
I don't know
looked
how you
at
phrased it,
places
but-
to rent, like in Madison Heights and other places, and they have similar rules. And I was very uneducated at the time about it, or exactly why it wasn't permitted.
And when they came to me about the use, with my experience already in this business and having microblading studios, I saw no issue with, and willing myself put up the fee and paid the money to come in front of the board, because I felt confident that this is not a use that should be restricted, especially considering the precedent that was set with Palazzolo Salon and the permanent makeup variance that they have as well.
Any other questions for the petitioners? I'm going to ask you folks to take a seat real quickly so we can open up the public hearing.
Thank you.
Is there anybody in the audience who would like to address us on this matter? Mr. Harrison.
Good evening. I'm Bill Harrison, 2729 Trafford, and I happen to own the building next door that's currently occupied by Right Impressions. The issue here is not the microblading. The issue is a variance for allowing a tattooing shop or salon. If the people that do microblading want to be disenfranchised from tattooing, then they need to talk to the people in Lansing and get themselves taken away from the tattooing and into a different category. The problem that I have here is that the variance will run with the land. Now, I don't have a problem with Rich Slater. He's owned that building almost as long as I've owned the Right Impressions building, and he's a stand-up guy. But Rich has owned other buildings in town and no longer owns them. That's his business, is buying properties and selling them. It's not like me. That's part of my retirement plan. So again, the variance runs with the land. So this is an owner issue, not a tenant issue. And it's Rich Slater that owns the building, and not this gentleman that has parsed out the space into 19 different studios. As I said, it runs with the land, and it's tied to the owner of the building, not the tenant. The issue that you have to address here is, what is the hardship? From the standpoint of the building owner, there's a wide variety of uses that can be put in any building in the central business district. If you look at the zoning plan, it's central business district, and then it leans on uses that are approved for neighborhood business, and it's just boundless. The building is already has a tenant, so Rich has a tenant, whether it's occupied by typical salon owners or business people, or whether it's microblading. So there's no hardship with respect to the building owner. The hardship, if any, is self-inflicted by creating a salon studios in the building. But again, this is a tenant issue, not an owner issue. And we really need to maintain the protection of the central business district from the 5 prohibited uses. And what, if the clock's not running, so I'm hopeful.
I'm watching it here.
You watch? I got some time?
You're close, but go ahead. Finish
Okay.
up.
I just wanted to give the background on this. As you know, there are 5 prohibited uses: an adult-oriented commercial enterprise, escort services and/or escort agencies, massage parlors and massage establishments, pawnbrokers and pawn shops, and of course the tattoo thing. And what started all this was a massage parlor that was up on Woodward, where the Frizzard Clock Tower now is. And we all know what massage parlors can degenerate to, and it did. And it was a problem for the neighborhood, it was a problem for the city. And once we were able, and it took years to get rid of that massage parlor, and once we got rid of that massage parlor, those of us in the central business district, everybody got together and said, we've got to do something to keep this from happening in the downtown, because it would be a killer for downtown. I mean, you really don't want to see these kinds of things going on up and down Washington and Main Street. So basically, to wrap it up, you have to look at this as a variance that would go with the land. It would violate the intent of promulgating this ordinance that specifically addresses 5 businesses. And Joe, I'm asking a question that I don't know the answer to, and that's a kiss of death. But I have to ask you this. It's been alleged that Palazzola's got a variance for this. The reason I ask is that, my building is within the distance, and I don't recall ever getting noticed that Palazzola's was going for a variance on this. Do we know that, or yes or no?
We'll talk about that once we bring it back.
Okay, all right, but you get my point. It's going to go with the land, and we're forever cursed with this. And I kind of view this as a Trojan horse, and we just don't want to let it in the gate. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Mrs. Harrison. All right.
Laura Harrison, same address. I'm like to, on the ordinance, and you saw it all, it's about the distances from various, what I would call family places. It said it has to be, it cannot be any closer than 1,000 square feet to a school. St. Mary's, First Presbyterian Church on Hendry, St. Paul's Lutheran, right over here. And I think it's just a hair outside, but Royal Oak Middle School is pretty close. Churches, again, St. Mary's, the Baptist Church on Main, St. Paul's Lutheran, St. John's Episcopal, library. We do have a library downtown. A park. We've got 2 parks close by, Eagle Park, which we just established, and Grant Park on 4th Street. You also have a future park coming. So those are within. You have playgrounds on most of these parks, including the one that's over by the senior center. He is requesting a variance, for all these establishments, and he wants to come closer. I figured it out. Anyhow, 37% closer to these children establishments and churches, and that really bothers me. Now, most of you know I had a business downtown. I am retired, joyfully, and but I just, like my husband said, it goes with the land. This variance goes with the land. And I'm not saying anything's wrong with this. I wouldn't do it. Touch my face, I mean, ugh. But I have a granddaughter who probably will try it because she does the tattoo stuff, little ones. I don't like them, but anyhow. But we have had tattoo parlors in Royal Oak. They're just not in the CBD. We asked it specifically when we did this, and I was on the commission at the time, when we did this and closed these places, that we not have it within the CBD because of the mixture of the people and the ages and the various churches and facilities close by. But we had a tattoo parlor just south of Lincoln, but it was not in the CBD. So there are plenty, if you want to find a place to put it, go look on Woodward. They got all kinds of empty buildings. So that's the thing as far as I'm concerned, is the closeness to the family-type businesses, which everybody's pushing.
Thank you so much. All right, I will go ahead and close the public hearing and
Start off some of the conversation.
Can I reply?
you will certainly be given adequate opportunity to do so. Let me start with Mr. Murphy because he has some comments that he wants to add.
Sure.
But if you three want to come up to the microphone, we're going to need you eventually anyways.
Seems to be a fair amount of conversation evolving around whether if the variance is granted, whether it runs with the property or just the tenant does in fact stay with the property. This petitioner has proposed to you to occupy one of the studio rooms within a business that otherwise provides services that are permitted. So in this sense, it's rather ancillary to the primary use of the property. If this proprietor was granted a variance and they established and they were in operation, they'd be able to continue to do so. If they went out of business and somebody else performing the same type of service wanted to do so in the same tenant space or a tenant space in that building, our office would sign off on that as an administrative approval. I've already received approval for the use from this board if it was granted. If the business model started evolving and the overwhelming majority of the tenant spaces within the space were conducting microblading or tattooing, or the whole entire establishment became a microblading or tattooing facility, it would be something very different from what you had approved. And I believe we would have pretty solid ground to stand on in order to be able to say, at this point, you've exceeded the threshold at which you've identified yourself to the Zoning Board of Appeals as, and you would have to seek a new variance request. You've gone beyond what you were originally granted approval for. But if you grant them the variance, it does run with the property, and themselves or any other tenant that operated in a similar manner would certainly be able to do so.
So Joseph, when you say, okay, if they have one cubicle now, 2 would probably be okay, 3 might be okay, 4, 5, I mean, it's very subjective as to what you're saying there, as to where you may or may not have grounds to change that.
Sure, and a lot of that would be based on if we determined that we felt that it had changed into something else and it became primarily that use, and that's not what was conveyed and approved by this board, and we took some type of code enforcement action of some sort, it would probably end up in front of the judge, and the judge would make that decision. Now, if it changed entirely to that type of establishment, I would feel very comfortable in stating that the city would probably have very good claim to state that it's something other than what it was originally approved for. But if it stays similar in nature,
So,
Let us finish our discussion. You'll get a chance,
are
I
you
promise.
saying that if like this one space, that is, if we allow it to be a microblade facility, if they left and a tattoo parlor, the typical one that we all know, moves in, there's nothing that could prevent them from operating there?
it's the same license from the state. When the state notifies us and the Oakland County Health Department notifies us, they simply illustrate that somebody's applying for that exact same license. Whether their business model is different is entirely up to the petitioner or the operator, but it's the same business license.
Question, could we grant it if it was limited to a certain amount of square footage, say 10% or 15% of the overall square footage, and do it that way?
The petitioner has provided you with an indication that they're going to be occupying a particular suite and on this floor plan.
Right.
They have the square feet of each of the tenant spaces.
Right. So we could limit it to, say, a certain amount of square feet.
You could. You could.
Any other questions?
I-
Mr. Mueller?
Okay.
The place across the street, the old Montgomery Ward's building, I recall that they got a variance to do some kind
A
of
number of years
tattooing.
ago. I want to say
Yeah,
at least a decade ago.
Yeah, so that's with the property. I mean,
They've since ceased entire operation. It's been, I believe, it has been vacant for over a year. Once it's vacant for over a year, then
Then
it's
it's
all
it went away. Okay, just out of curiosity, because I do remember when that went
That was a
through.
while ago. You're
It-
probably the
it
only one that
was.
remembers.
Yeah, well.
They weren't here.
Mr. Kroll was on the board. Ms. Harrison was on the board at that point.
Okay.
I remember that discussion.
I never served with, I was gone by
Joseph,
then.
I have a question for you about these 5 uses that are under this control. The 5th one is the only one that's in play with this variance, this use request. Is that true?
Correct.
They're only asking for the 5th one. And because microblading is regulated by the state in the same way that tattooing is, therefore it falls into this 5th one only.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Murphy? Mr. Kroll?
I'm always wondering how someone figured this out. I mean, I got to admit, I don't know much about what you people do other than what I've heard this evening. It doesn't sound like tattooing to me. In 12 and a half years, I've served on a zoning board one place or another. No one's ever come in front of us not trying to break the rules. So I can appreciate the Harrison's concern. But on the other hand, I think it's important to kind of look at each one of these cases. I would like to see some controls, but I don't really see it as tattooing. It seems like what they're doing is reasonable.
This is a very common request that we get over the phone, or people come to the counter. This is a very, very common request now.
This particular microblading, you're saying?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Let me throw it back to the petitioner, because I know there's a couple of things that you want to address. And then also, while you're addressing those, why don't you speak to the controls that you sort of hear being thrown around?
Absolutely.
Please.
We do not expect this to be primarily microblading. In Troy, in our location there, we have 32 units. 3 of them are used for this right now. A potential 4th, we have someone is looking at a 4th. I am okay with the board restricting this to a certain percent of the building square footage, even 10 or 15%. Is not, it would not be a hardship in the nature of what we're trying to do. I wouldn't see any more than 2 or 3 of these types of uses in the building in itself. One of the reasons we opened in Royal Oak was due to the beauty industry and the number of it's a beauty destination, and it's especially on Washington Street it has become that. So we don't foresee this being primarily this use, and I am okay restricting it to a certain number of units or square feet. And in regards, there are other questions. I apologize.
How many people are qualified in the city to do this sort of work?
It's, you must have a tattoo license and then be additionally certified for microblading, which is a separate
I
certification.
mean, if you're gonna specialize in this, how many people could you find to do this kind of work?
Not that many. It's a very specialized skill.
Growing, but.
It's becoming more popular.
A lot longer.
But it's a specialized skill. Your tattoo artist could not come in the space and perform this. It's an art and it's a special technique. If you looked at any of the photographs, it really is beautiful how they're able to transform using this technique. But it is specialized in a sense, and by no means, would we look to negatively impact the community. Your concerns with the youth, and we don't want that. I don't want that. I've discussed this with Mr. Slater, who is the current owner of the building, and he had no issues, obviously, which is why he's not here with this use. So we ask that you allow the variance, and we will be respectful of the city, its guidelines, and look to be a part of the community for a long time. And I can assure you that if you haven't stepped foot in the building and in the space, we took a vacant space that has been vacant for, several years and have converted it to a beautiful space, driving more business and more people to the downtown district, which are going to shop next door at the card shop and gift shop to buy different trinkets and whatnot. So I really feel that it's a positive addition, and there is really no hardship that would be incurred here.
And can I say something?
Sure.
The body tattoo for the guy, 99% is guy, but the microblading, 99% is lady. Different.
She's saying the
I
clientele
think I
is.
saw Ms. Anderson's
I have
hand
a
next, yes.
question then for you.
Yes.
Is this is your type of specialty better seen in, say, I know dermatologists now have their spas section, things like that. Is it something that have you ever looked into that to see if you could be a part of that type of an atmosphere or business plan?
This is the similar atmosphere that you
Well,
would still have
not
the
the
same
similar atmosphere
requirements.
as
It would still be
a
restricted.
medical
State requires the same.
type of a
The state-
environment.
They would require the same certificate, it'd have to be licensed through the state and meet the ordinances.
Yeah, it can't be done in certain, and it cannot be done in areas that other things are done, like hair, and it has to have its own separate, clean area, so.
I didn't quite understand what you said. It
So
couldn't
the
be done
state
where.
requires that, like microblading can't be done in a place or like the same chair or area that hair would be done in, because you have to be careful with contamination, so.
Right, no, I wasn't talking about hair, I was talking about a dermatology type of
Right.
a medical
So-
office environment where that would be, it would seem like a great transition from, if you have some issues like that, you could then get that service done. And when you say hair, isn't that what all these other places
Yeah.
are nearby too?
Yeah, but they're separated.
Separated. They're
In little
separated.
different offices,
Yes.
cubicles?
How much of this building is leased right now?
Right now, 50%, or without this, considering them, so 43% or so is.
What does that mean out of, how many offices is it all built out?
It's all built out. There is 7 out of the 19. The 2 larger units taking up the most square footage are leased. So it is important for us to lease the building, and that'll ensure our viability as a business, and the more diverse uses we can have in the building, the better, our business obviously will perform, so.
What square footage do you have of it would be utilized by the space? So if we limited to 10% or 15%, knowing what that would.
Yeah, I mean, if it's limited to 15%, that would be limited to maybe 4 rooms. Her room is about 128 square feet, I believe. So the square footage is there. The total building is 4,300 square feet. So I could say, definitely less than 4, 4 or less, and I would be okay with that restriction.
Yeah, Anthony, I was gonna say if somebody was gonna introduce a motion, maybe we should say something like 4 stalls or 15%, whatever gets stripped first.
Yeah.
Is anybody prepared to Yes, sir.
Go ahead.
Hey, we're on this side of the table. Anthony has the floor right now.
I'd like to make a motion to grant the variance as requested, limited to 15% or 4 stalls, whichever gets tripped first. I like that idea. Very good.
We have a motion.
I'll support.
We have a second. Do you want to follow up on your motion, sir?
Yes, as been discussed, this is starting to become a beauty corridor here on South Washington, and this is more of a beauty aspect. My cousin, his wife actually works in a similar type thing in Ohio, and it's stuff like this occurs as well as the beauty salon part of it, and it's really high end. And this is one of those things that not only is high end, but also women, especially who are going through cancer and lose their hair. I definitely know that occurs with them going and getting this stuff done. So this is actually being a service to them. As was brought up by Ms. Harrison, there's already a tattoo parlor really close to St. Mary's that's just outside the central business district. So the proximity, in my opinion, is worse in that case than this case. And if we limit it to just 15%, we're really limiting to what could potentially grow out of this if it happens to turn sideways. So I don't see a problem granting the hardships that they are coming across here, running into.
And Ms. Zukin, do you want to follow up?
I don't see this as fitting into the spirit of the adult business restrictions. Permanent makeup is something that is very common these days, and it's not really considered tattooing by the public, and it's not used, the facilities aren't used the same way that tattoo facilities are. I'm only concerned that the law, I think, needs to be rewritten somehow to allow for these, because I am concerned that the business could eventually become a tattoo parlor, but I think the city would have enough tools somehow to crack down on it if it was.
Anybody else?
Isn't the variance, can it not be conditions stipulated, as I think it says in one of your, that because of our business being in the spirit of the act or law, that it's not deleterious to the neighborhood and that it isn't an adult business by perception, can't you attach conditions that this variance would not be allowed to turn into a, let's say, a tattoo or a piercing business?
Yeah, that's more an enforcement issue, and I think I think Anthony crafted his motion to really put the safeguards in place that we're looking for. Is there any other discussion, Mr. Kroll?
Yeah, I tend to agree with Ms. Zukin. I'm not, quite honestly, I walked in here briefly reading over this, not understanding a lot of what was going on. I had no in mind. I think in fairness to anybody that comes in front of us, and with great respect to the Harrisons, because they do a lot for Royal Oak, these people have convinced me today that I was thinking the wrong way, and therefore I'll be supporting it.
Mr. Mueller.
Things change. When the massage parlor on Woodward was closed, it was a total different thing than the massage parlors we have all over the city today with yoga massage or whatever. In fact, I'd never go to a chiropractor, but I'd go to a massage person if I had a problem. It seems this is an evolving thing, and I think that, again, enough safeguards were put in that the city, if something did go south, would have the ability to do something about it. So I feel very well with supporting this.
I like to think of us kind of as avant-garde, too. I mean, we're Royal Oak, right? We shouldn't be the last ones to experience things.
There's salon suites and a number in Troy and
We're on this side of the table. Ms. Anderson?
So my concern is it evolving into the traditional tattoo. 30%, I think it's 36% of all Americans have a tattoo of some kind. It's a crazy high amount, and it's not that I'm against tattoos, and I think that your service is pretty amazing. I just don't want to see it take a life of its own, and I don't know that those checks that we've put in, the 15%, that 15% could be at the front of the front of the building, and it could say tattoos and all that. So I don't know how you control that. I think Joseph's correct in saying it's very difficult to control that once something like that passes. And if I go through the criteria, it's a use requirement that we're changing, and I do believe that obviously it can be used for other purposes at this point. So I'll be not supporting it.
Anybody else? All right, well, not seeing any comments, I will go ahead and call for the vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed?
No.
You're all set?
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Folks. All right, do we have any other business? Then that takes us to public comment. Is there any public comment?
Some 2729 Trafford. I liked your suggestion, since we're letting the camel's nose into the tent, it really would have been helpful if you had been more specific and said that this does not allow for traditional tattooing, that it be limited specifically to the microblading. And that's why I had my paw up, but I knew I was reaching.
Can we write that in?
The motion's passed, I mean.
Well, but the motion's, I think, vague enough that.
It's public comment, it's not public question and answer.
Oh, sorry.
But you see my point, because I'm an engineer, not an attorney, but you know what the attorneys are like. They can take, they're like a mouse, they can slip through a hole the size of a dime. Anyway, that's my point. And it was alleged that the card shop is going to do more business because of another salon-related business next to it. I know this is hearsay, but my tenant does not feel that salons produce business for their business. And at one time, they were supportive of offices on the first floor because they thought it was going to bring more business their way. I tried to tell them that that's not going to happen, and they've now found out that that is not the case. And I'm going to keep preaching that we need to do something in the CBD to preclude office on the first floor and keep retail and restaurant, et cetera, with the obvious exceptions for banks, et cetera. So I've talked until I'm blue in the face, and nobody seems to want to listen to that, so I just had to get it out there one more time. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Have a great night.
Good night, sir.
All right, with that being said,
I move to adjourn.
we have a motion to adjourn.
Support.
And we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We are adjourned.